And welcome to everything I read in 2021 that I loved. Although, no. So, names. Lauren and Ryan have been married, I want to say for like 10 years. But not like Brecknake, that's not even a word. I had such a great reading year, you guys, and I'm just like over the moon about it. And okay, let's just start talking about the books. Hi everybody, it's Audrey and welcome back to Chapter and Converse. And welcome to, finally, my favorite books of 2021. So I am someone who definitely does year-end content after the end of the year. I count my books until December 31st of what I've read for the year, and they factor into what you're about to see today. So, full disclosure, I 1000% already filmed this video. And full disclosure, I apparently, after 3 years on BookTube, every once in a while still cannot quite get the camera right on the tripod. So it was so hyper crooked, which I didn't realize, obviously, because I would not have filmed an entire video with a crooked looking bookshelf behind me. I was trying to sit in a chair, and not that anybody cares, but I was trying not to sit on the floor and use my tripod, which I've used 100 times before, and it just, garbage. The entire video is garbage. So we're reshooting it today. I'm gonna muster all the same enthusiasm because I totally love these books. So like I've done in the past, I'm gonna do this in multiple parts because as much as I would like to tell you guys, I can be super succinct with what I wanna say because I've already talked about all of these books so many times. I also know myself and that's just not gonna happen. So you're going to get multiple videos about the books that I loved this year because there's a huge stack of them. So let's get into round one. So first up, I want to start with my few honorable mentions, and I have 3 of them. Yeah, that's right. The first one is The Lost Village by Camilla Sten. I just finished this book in December 7th, I finished it. And I totally loved all the spooky vibes of this. It was super atmospheric. It was my first book that I've read by Camilla Sten. I have her new book, which comes out in March, which I'm so excited about. But this is like Blair Witch, dual timelines. So this is about an old mining town in Sweden where back in 1959, the entire village just disappeared and it became the Lost Village. So the village is there, but the people are all gone, with the exception of one woman who was found in the town square hanging and stoned to death, and then an abandoned baby in the schoolhouse. And in current day, we have a documentary film crew who wants to do a documentary about this. So they go out to get some footage because they want to crowdsource and get some funding for it. And no sooner do they get there as weird things start to happen. So spooky, atmospheric, my Riley Sager favorite, Dancing the Line. Is it ghosty? Is it not? Hands down, just such a great read. The next book is Pet Sematary by Stephen King, and I did this as part of my 5-star predictions. I had never read a Stephen King book because I was so afraid to read a Stephen King book. So I read his nonfiction On Writing many times, and I saw the movie of Pet Sematary, the original, when I was in high school, and it terrified me, and I refused to read any of his books, but I'm so happy I read this book. The writing was great. It's such a powerful story about grief as much as it is a truly terrifying, creepy story. So, such a fan. This was so well done, and I am excited to read more of his books this year, and I've said it before, and I'm gonna say it one last time. You guys can hold me to it. I am reading Misery this year. I thought I had it nearby. I don't. I'm totally reading Misery. It's gonna happen. But this one, definitely I feel like it opened the floodgates for me for going into Stephen King's world. And then my last honorable mention is Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. So I definitely loved this book. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I cried. I loved the sibling relationship. I loved Nina. I loved HUD. I love everything that Taylor Jenkins Reid does. There's a different Taylor Jenkins Reid book on my best of list. And it's not to say I couldn't have 2 by her, but I definitely loved this book. It wasn't perfect, but it was really, really well done. I love being in that same universe with Evelyn and Daisy and seeing the connection between them. So Mick Riva, who is the father of the 4 children in this book, used to be Evelyn's husband. I love that she doesn't call out Evelyn by name and that she has little breadcrumbs and little Easter eggs throughout her different books. But it was really well done. I mean, Taylor Jenkins Reid can do no wrong in my book. So we get multiple timelines in this. I cringe that they consider the 80s historical fiction, but I would like to think it's considered historical fiction because we do go back to the 50s and we see how Mick and his wife get together and we see their history, and then in present day, in the early 80s, we see the 4 grown children and they're having a party, and it's the party to end all parties, and I just love it so much. I love everything that she does, and this was definitely one of my faves of the year. Okay, so let's get into the best of the best. And I have talked a lot about these in my monthly wrap-up, so again, I'm gonna try and keep some of these brief, but we'll see how I do. So first up is The Nothing Man by Catherine Ryan Howard. This is the first book I've read by her. I am so excited that she has a backlist to dive into. This was definitely very I'll Be Gone in the Dark, Golden State Killer vibes. Catherine Ryan Howard says she was directly inspired by that Michelle McNamara book and her obsession with that case and her investigation and just stopping at nothing to solve that case. And in this book, genius, we have a book within a book, and we have 2 points of view. So we have our main character, whose name is Eve, and when Eve was a child, her entire family was murdered by a serial killer who was haunting their area and became known as the Nothing Man because he didn't leave a trace, he was never found, and she's been haunted by this, understandably, her entire life. So in present day, she has written a book about it, very much kind of like a Golden State Killer-ish type of book. So in her book, she tells the entire story of all the other families that were affected, all the other victims that he had, and it obviously re-inspires people to look into it, it sparks some interest. And then the other point of view that we have is our local security guard at the supermarket, Jim. And he is really interested in this story as well, and he picks it up when he's working at the market one day and starts reading it. And he's really interested in it because he is the Nothing Man. So the book's about him. And he's totally fascinated, and obviously he's completely freaked out of, is he finally going to be caught after all these years? So I just loved everything about this book. I loved the 2 point of views. I love the writing. So well done. I love a book within a book, like Home Before Dark and Anthony Horowitz's books. Like, I just love that as a structure. This one was great. Another book that I read towards the end of the year that I just, as I was reading it, knew this was going to be on the list. And it's The Girls Are All So Nice Here by Laurie Elizabeth Flynn. This book definitely gives me In My Dreams I Hold a Knife kind of vibes. We have a mystery in the past and a mystery in the present. We have these girls who met freshman year in college, and then we fast forward 10 years later to their reunion. And something happened when they were in college, and somebody wants to get revenge for what they did back then. And I loved the dark and messed up female friendship of this. I found it so relatable in the sense of being like a freshman in college, wanting to fit in, wanting to be liked, that dynamic that happens sort of very quickly where people fall into groups right away. I understand this desire that she had to be liked by this certain group of people. You have that feeling of being away from home for the first time, and relationships become very intense sort of right out of the gate. And I just loved how this was woven together. This was messy. This was definitely unlikable characters. This is the dark and messed up people doing dark and messed up things. But I have such a fascination with the dynamic between female friendships at younger ages and at older ages. It's definitely one of my tropes, and it's one of my buzzwords. And I thought this was so well done. So Laurie Elizabeth Flynn has written some YA, which I haven't read yet, but I do have All Eyes on Her, which I will be reading. But in this book, so we have our 2 main characters. So we have Ambrosia, and then we have Sully, who is Sloane Sullivan and goes by Sully. And Ambrosia is the girl who is just trying to fit in. She is trying to impress people. She wants to be liked. And Sully is just like that it girl. She just has that thing, the je ne sais quoi. Everything just seems easy and free, and people flock to her. And she's a little bit wild, and she's definitely ruffling feathers and making decisions. But it's that girl that people just sort of circle around and are fascinated by. It's the cool girl. It's the cool girl from Gone Girl. Like, she just has that thing. And Ambrosia wants nothing more than to be in Sully's orbit, so to speak. And she does things to be in the orbit, and the 2 of them become really good friends, and then they make bad choices. But I love this book so much. I just thought it was very honest and real, and a very accurate portrayal about how people can get sucked in by people who fascinate them and just sort of lose themselves at the same time. its secrets, its lies. There's just so much to this book, and I just loved everything about it. Like, so well done. Cannot wait to see what she does next. And I haven't looked yet, I hope she does more adult thrillers, because I really feel like this was just tremendous. Something I would say like a little bit lighter, but actually has heaviness to it, and it's Beach Read by Emily Henry. So I'm definitely late to the party on this one. And I do have people we meet on vacation, but I haven't read it yet. But I thought this was definitely going to be just sort of light, fluffy, kind of rom-com-y. I picked this up when I had to go back to work for a bit, and I had to commute and like go into the office as we reopened our office. And I just wanted something I could read on the train that was going to be distracting and that was not going to remind me of the world going on around me. And this book completely was what I needed at the time. And I just loved everything about it. I thought it was so well written. I thought the stories were great. And as much as this does have sort of this enemy to lovers vibe to it, there's also such a great discussion in here about family and grief and loss and feeling lost and trying to start over and really just being untethered. And then, you know, finding solace or finding, I don't want to say rescue because that's not the right word, but finding a way out of the hole that you're in, or, you know, sort of like the rock bottom, 50 feet of crap, then me, like finding your way back out and sort of finding it in the most unlikely of places. So this book follows two writers, which is also buzzword for me. And we have Augustus Everett, so he's an acclaimed author of literary fiction, and then January Andrews, who writes best-selling romance. So January's father passes away, and she winds up inheriting his cabin. She goes up to clean it out so she can sell it. And she finds her next door neighbor to be quite obnoxious. And then she also figures out that she knows him, and he was one of her rivals in college. So the two of them are both trying to write their next book. They both have a massive case of writer's block, and they wind up partnering up and basically trying to help each other out of the ruts that they're in. So you get sort of this great bonding over writing issues. You get this great writer perspective, which I very much liked. It is sort of an enemies to lover. There's snark, there's humor. Like I said, there's definitely like pain and heavier subjects in a lot of ways to this. Do not let the, you know, like the cartoony cover fool you. There are moments of great levity and laughter, but it definitely also strikes some deeper chords. It reminds me of a Marian Keyes book in that way, which I love, and I am so excited. She has a new book called Book Lovers coming out this year, which I can't wait to read, but this was everything. Like, it really surprised me, and I had heard so many great things about it, but it just exceeded my expectations, I should say. I figured I would like it. I didn't know I was gonna love it. Another book that caught me totally off guard, and I will admit, there was a lot of discussion about this. I was having a little bit of FOMO, and then I saw the cover and I was like, ooh, I want to cover buy this, and this is out of my comfort zone, but I kind of want to be like in on the conversation completely. I've said this before and I'll say it again too. Marketer's dream, party of one right here. But this is House of Hollow by Crystal Sutherland, and I loved this. I'm going to say this about all the books. This one I really did not see coming, in the sense of I did not expect to love it as much as I did. There is some definite ick factor to this book. Like, I would not read this while eating. There is definitely, it's not body horror, but it's like, there's some grotesque moments in this book. So this is one of those books that is grounded sort of in reality in one foot. So in one foot we're in London, and then the other foot we're sort of in this other land. So this follows the three Hollow sisters. So it's Vivi, Iris, and Gray. So Iris is really our main character. She's 17 years old right now, and about 10 years ago, her and her sisters were walking down the street in Scotland behind their parents. It was New Year's Eve. It was just at midnight. They were strolling down the street, and their parents turned around and the three girls were gone. They disappeared like into the ether on this street. And then 1 month later, they reappear out of nowhere on that same street with no memory of what happened to them back then. But things, as you can guess, have never been the same since the girls reappeared. So in present day, Gray, who is the oldest sister, has gone missing. And Iris and Vivi are convinced that it has something to do with what happened to them 10 years ago. So they are on a mission to find their sister. So we, like I said, we sort of are going grounded in reality, but sort of in this something mystical that's happening. And of course, as it happens, they're not the only ones looking for Gray. And did she go missing? Did she run away? Is something from their past coming to haunt them in the present? I thought the writing in this was beautiful. I loved the story of the sisters. There were a lot of cringy moments. I know I said it in my original review of it, like you could smell the decay and kind of like the mildew and the rot in this book. Like the writing is so beautifully descriptive, even when she's describing really, really gross things, but it's just so lyrical and well done. I'm such a fan. I have picked up her earlier books, which I haven't read yet, but I was listening to, of course, this is also a theme, interviews with her and podcasts, and she talked about how she very much just sort of like let it all hang out, for lack of a better way of phrasing it. She said it much better than that, but kind of put everything she wanted to into this book. Like, this is the passion, this is the book she wanted to write. She had held herself back a little bit in her original books, and in this one she just went all in, which reminds me of what Jennifer Hillier had said when I had the distinct pleasure of getting to talk to her about Jar of Hearts, which I loved. And she said that was the book where she just sort of had nothing to lose and she just put it all in there. And I feel like that makes for the best books. And I'm looking at my pile and I'm realizing I had another honorable mention that I didn't mention before. I'll talk about it a little more in a minute. This was a reread for me, which is why it's an honorable mention. But Riley Sager said the exact same thing when, again, I was doing an online event and I submitted a question asking about writing advice, and he just said like he had nothing to lose when he wrote this book and just put everything he had into it. This was his last chance. And I feel like when authors do that, the most incredible books are born out of it. And I think House of Hollow is definitely a case of that. So loved it. So well done. I cannot wait to see what she writes next too. Okay, I feel like we should do the thing. So yes, this was a reread for me. I loved it even more the second time around. I gave this book 5 stars the first time I read it, and if I could give it 5+, I would. I think it is his best book. It still remains my top favorite of his. I am in the process of rereading all of his books because I'm obsessive like that. But I just love what he did with this. I love the homage to horror movies. I love the darkness that's in this, the dark characters that are in this. I love the concept of the final girl, and I just think he did a brilliant job with this book. It was creepy, we get some dual timelines, and I just think he nailed it with this book. He absolutely nailed it with this book, and I loved it, and it is still my #1 favorite of all of his books. So stay tuned after I reread all of them, but I would be shocked if anything unseats this. I read this book first. I've read his books in order because I discovered him when this had just come out. So I definitely appreciate seeing also how he's sort of grown and changed in his books and the different things he's done. But even though this was not his first book as a writer, he wrote under his original name, not his pen name, I definitely think this is where he hit his stride, and I just love everything about it. Let's switch gears to an author who was new to me this year, and this is Vera Korean and Never Saw Me Coming. So there's definitely, no surprise, a real deep theme of dark and messed up people doing dark and messed up things in my favorites of the year because that's where my heart is. And this book was so brilliant. It's dark comedy, it's definitely messed up. There's such great twisted humor to this, and I love everything about it. I love how well written it was. I love the story itself. This is about a girl named Chloe. She is a diagnosed psychopath, and she gets a free ride to this college to be a part of this secret study that's taking place there, where they are studying psychopaths and what makes for psychopathic behavior and sort of how psychopaths behave and react and act and, you know, psychopathy stuff. But Chloe is not too concerned with like the free ride because she was going to go to this school anyway. Because for years, Chloe has been plotting to get revenge on this guy named Will, who she's known since she was younger, who did her wrong. So she's actually come to this school because she's going to kill Will. That is absolutely her mission. She's here for that. And this whole side study thing is just sort of a little icing on the cake. So we get a point of view from Chloe, and then we also get points of view from Charlie and from Andre. And what happens in this book is a student in that secret psychopath study is found murdered, like brutally. No question about it, this was not an accident. But no one's supposed to know about the study. So it starts to raise questions of who knows what's going on. Is someone after the students? And in the case of Chloe, she goes from sort of hunter to prey, but she still is like on her mission to kill Will. Like nothing is getting her off that path. So there's a lot of twists, there's a lot of things going on in here, but not neck-breaking twists. And I've talked about this in my debut author video. She doesn't write from the twist, she writes from the characters, and you can feel that. So even though there's things going on and there's mysteries and there's questions, she totally plays fair. The breadcrumbs are there. The writing is great. The characters are great. I initially did this on audiobook, which I loved. It was really, really well done. I think there's a real sense of voice when you do the audio. And I didn't own the book at the time, and I wound up buying the book while I was listening to the audio because I knew I needed to have it in my life. And I just loved it. So another one that I'm looking out for. Can't wait to see what she does more of. If you watch my favorite debuts of the year, this one won't be a surprise either. And it's We Are the Brennans by Tracy Lang. And this follows a family in New York, and it is very much family dynamics, it's grief, it's shared history, it's secrets from your past, it's secrets from your present, and it's the complications of that family dynamic. So in this one, we have a girl named Sunday, and she is the only daughter, the only sister in this family. And she left New York 5 years ago, left her fiance, and has gone off to this life in LA. And everyone isn't really hearing too much from her. So when the book opens, Sunday has just been in a really bad drunk driving accident that she caused. And she's in the hospital, and her older brother comes out to get her and brings her back to New York to help her recoup. But when she comes back to New York, she has to face all the things she left behind, not just her family, but that ex-fiance of hers as well. So this book packs such a punch in such a small amount of time. Like from the beginning, you are in it with this family. I fell in love with them from the start. I cried, I was cheering, I was nervous when I was reading parts of it. I really loved how this book was written, literally, how it goes from chapter to chapter. And I don't want to call it a device because that makes it sound cheap, but for lack of a better term, the device that Tracy Lang uses to move us from chapter to chapter. We get multiple points of view, and I feel like you get to know these characters so well. I was so fast to fall in love with them. I was so fast to feel like I was in this family. This is set in, albeit a fictional town, but in a real part of New York that I know very well. And I love that sense of atmosphere. Like I feel like she really grasped that area really well. Like definitely she knows this part of town. And I think it was great. As a debut, blown away by what a great debut this was. And this was another one. So I got the arc of this from Celadon. I didn't know anything about it when I got it. This was a book that is not a thriller, but I compulsively flipped pages, I compulsively read, I needed to know what was gonna happen next. It gave me that same feeling of not wanting to put the book down that I feel when I read a thriller. And I think for a contemporary family drama to be able to achieve that is also just out of this world. But so many cheers to Tracy Lang. This book is just absolutely amazing. So that's gonna do it for part one of everything I read in 2021 that I absolutely loved. So I will be back with more. Tune on in. I am not gonna stagger these videos out like over the next couple of weeks. I'm gonna pack them out and like knock them out for you guys. So tune back in. If you're not already subscribed, definitely hit that button so you can find out when the new video is coming. And thanks for hanging out today and spending some time with me. And I will see you guys in another video really soon. Bye everybody.